I think it's important to bear in mind that there are aspects of the accession process which will inherently slow down, and there are aspects which will go much faster. In the recent 5 years, you've had improvements and you've had slowdowns and bumps. The problem is over the last maybe last 5 days, there was a serious threat that it was actually going to come to a halt. So there's a Chapter 22 which potentially could have really kind of broken the whole process. And that's a bit worse than what we're normally used to. And I think it's not to point any fingers, but nonetheless, obviously the main contender is Germany here. And you have to question why they would sacrifice such an important chapter in relation to the accession on Turkey. Now, the question is really, are we talking about a wider pandemic issue of accession, or is it just specifically Turkey, or is it maybe even national elections in Germany? There are a lot of questions kind of bumping around.
And obviously the bigger question is, if they're putting up speed bumps now, eventually, will they come around? Is that a big fear as well?
Well, I mean, thankfully, over the last, there was a bit of fear mongering in the last few days. People were thinking, okay, there's a bit of an alliance of countries within the European Union who aren't necessarily in favor of Turkey, including Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and a few other unnamed partners. But thankfully, the other guys, the other team, which include Sweden, Britain, Italy, and other countries as well, kind of won the battle. And I think it's not really an ideological battle, or at least that's how we see it. We don't see it as an ideological battle. We see it more as a battle between domestic politics and then the future of the European Union. So it's a bit of a trade-off like that. A diplomat recently told me, rhetoric is rhetoric, and we'll get over that. But as long as the structural foundation doesn't change, Turkey-EU relations will continue. And if you look at the structural foundation of Turkey-EU relations, they will continue. Undoubtedly, there are economic, geopolitical, energy-related, even cultural, diplomatic, and political ties which won't be broken. So even though maybe the Prime Minister Erdogan might come out with some fierce comments, and vice versa, you might get some fierce comments from the European Parliament, the Commission, and even member states, the underlying reasons to come together will remain. Protests are an inherently domestic thing. So there's been a lot of slander going around about protests being instigated by others, third parties, whatnot. I think these kind of things should be disregarded. I mean, just to give you an idea, recently I read something that there were Iranians involved in the demonstrations in Istanbul. Who knows? But that's not really the important part. The important part here is the fact that demonstrations are obviously a manifestation of a polarized society or something which isn't working, but that's not an inherently Turkish issue. It's an issue which you find in Greece, you find in Spain, you find in Italy, you find in France and England and many other places. And we've seen the austerity protests all across Europe. Now, we should condemn police violence at all costs. It's unacceptable. But what should not be done is you shouldn't be stopping an accession process on behalf of that, because the accession process is precisely there to implement better democratic reforms. So by taking it away or saying, let's use it as a trade-off or as a bargaining tool, as Germany has been doing with Turkey recently, I find it to be inherently unproductive on a democratic scale. I think in general with the accession process, you have an issue on both sides of the spectrum, meaning both in the EU and in Turkey, in relation to voters versus governments. So it's quite obvious that there is enlargement fatigue in the European Union. And similarly in Turkey, you do find a sort of fatigue in relation to the accession process, which admittedly has been going on for a very long time now. So there's a problem, that's for sure. But I think what needs to be overcome is the fact that this problem won't stay the same forever. So what does that mean exactly? It means governments should proactively try to create more of a bond with their electorate to understand the importance of this enlargement process, both for the European Union, but also for Turkey. And I have the impression, I think I'm not the only one, if you look at the media more broadly and also diplomats and many others, I think a lot of us have the impression that governmentally elected people have not been trying their best recently. That applies both for Germany, it also applies for Turkey.